The Phenom, Prologue, by Jeda Ali. They call it destiny, but destiny doesn't knock on your door and introduce itself. It shows up in whispers, in sleepless nights, in that tug in your chest that says, "You were made for more." I didn't always understand it. I was just a kid sitting in the back of a church, trying to blend in when suddenly the spotlight of prophecy found me. A voice called my name and told me I was chosen. At 12 years old, I didn't feel chosen. I felt exposed. That day planted a seed I couldn't ignore. Even when life grew heavy, even when friends turned cold, even when my own family doubted me, the seed kept pushing through the soil. Every time I tried to quit, something inside whispered, "Keep climbing." This book isn't about being perfect. It's about being pursued by greatness, by calling, by the mountain that never stops calling your name. I wrote this not just for me, but for everyone who has ever felt the weight of being different. For the ones who can't turn off the voice inside that says, "You're meant for more." This is the story of the climb. This is the story of sacrifice, rewiring, heartbreak, and glory. This is the story of the Phenom. The Phenom by Jeda Ali. Chapter 1. The Chosen Ones. Being chosen doesn't feel like a trophy. It feels like a sentence. People imagine it's applause, fanfare, a spotlight that makes you shine. But when you're really chosen, the spotlight doesn't just show you, it burns you. It exposes every flaw, every fear, every whisper of doubt. It makes you feel like you don't belong in your own skin, like the ground beneath you is cracking just because you're standing on it. I didn't ask to be chosen. Nobody does. The truth is, if you knew the cost, you wouldn't raise your hand. See, being chosen isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about being assigned to climb a mountain most people never even see. And the climb is lonely. When the calling is on you, you're carrying something that nobody else around you can feel, so they treat it like you're dramatic, obsessed, or delusional. But chosen people know that feeling in their chest, the itch that doesn't go away. I felt it every time I tried to chill, every time I tried to take it easy. The world says, "Relax, take a break, be normal." But the whisper inside me said, "If you stop, you'll lose it." And the "it" wasn't money, wasn't status. It was God's hand. When I slowed down, it felt like God lifted his palm off me. Not literally, but the sensation was real. Like oxygen thinning, like favor leaving. My body would even get sick. Headaches, tight chest, no appetite. That's how serious it felt to rest when destiny was saying move. Chosen people walk around with invisible weights. You're sitting at dinner with friends, but your mind is 3 years in the future. You're smiling at the party, but your spirit is already at war. People see your face and think you're with them, but your soul is climbing a mountain they can't see. And the coldest part? Nobody understands. You search for people like you, people who get it, who can talk in your language of sacrifice and vision, and it feels like looking for water in a desert. Sometimes you meet someone who seems close, and for a moment you feel less crazy. But sooner or later you realize their mountain is smaller, their calling is lighter, their price is cheaper, so you're alone again. That's when the battle turns inward. It's not just you against the world, it's you against the old you, the comfortable you, the lazy you, the you that wants to please friends and family more than destiny. I used to get into arguments with people, but they weren't really arguments with them. They were debates between the old me and the new me. Somebody would start talking fear, doubt, or lack, and I would snap not because of them, but because I refused to let the old language take root in my mind again. When you fought too hard to break programming, you become ruthless with your own thoughts. I slapped myself out of negativity literally, red-faced at night but not broken. I'd rather sting my skin than let my spirit rot. Chosen people learn quickly that greatness doesn't come with instructions. You learn as you go, bleeding on pages nobody else will read. You lose friends, break relationships, disappoint family, and still keep moving because something in you says, keep climbing. That's the difference. That's the line. Most people want greatness. Chosen people need it. Want is optional. Need is oxygen. And once you feel that, you can never go back. The first thing you notice when you're chosen is the silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of being misunderstood. The silence after you pour your heart out and your friends look at you like you're speaking a foreign language. The silence after you tell your family your dream and they laugh, or worse, they tell you to get real. Chosen people don't get applause in the beginning. They get questioned. They get doubted. They get told to lower their voice, shrink their vision, quit acting bigger than you are. I used to think something was wrong with me, like maybe I was reaching too high. My friends Larry, Miko, Philip, Vante, they were good dudes, and we had some movie nights together. Beautiful women, clubs, gyms, laughter. But the moment I started talking about the next level, their energy shifted. Bro, you ain't made it yet. Why you always reaching so high? Man, chill and enjoy life. They didn't mean harm, but their language was poison. And the thing about poison, it doesn't need to kill you fast. It just needs to drip. One drop of doubt, one sentence of limitation, one careless laugh at your dream, and if you believe it, the poison sets in. I didn't hate them for it. I loved them, even when they couldn't love my future. But love has a way of making you shrink yourself. I tried to fit in their rhythm, but the whisper in me kept screaming, "You weren't built to stay here." That's the psychological warfare of greatness. It's not just the mountain in front of you. It's the mountain inside of you. The mountain that asks, are you really chosen or are you crazy? I remember being 17, broke but burning. I started managing a girl group, hosting auditions at McDonald's, in living rooms, anywhere. People thought I was out of my mind. But when I saw those girls sing, I saw something in them they didn't even know was there. I spoke it, pulled it out. And some of them went on to stages I hadn't even touched yet. Kanye, The Voice, TV shows. That's when I realized chosen people don't just build themselves, they build others. But even that came with a price. My family didn't clap. My uncles, Uncle Billy, Uncle Joe, Uncle Sean, each in their own way told me I was wasting time. Uncle Billy said I should quit being creative and get a real job. Uncle Joe once told me, if you were really going to be great, we'd have heard of you by now. Uncle Sean, the one I idolized, fought me like a stranger when honesty broke through the surface. Do you know what that does to a kid? To hear men you look up to question your destiny. It plants a doubt so deep you think it's your own voice, and if you're not careful, you start agreeing with it. But chosen people learn to fight back, even if the fight looks insane. I slap myself out of negative thoughts. I refuse to let those words stay in my mind, unchallenged. My face stung, but my spirit stayed sharp. See, people think being chosen is glamorous. They picture applause, stages, cameras. But the truth? It's nights of arguing with voices nobody else hears. It's skipping parties because the whisper won't let you waste time. It's losing relationships because you refuse to shrink again. It's crying in silence because the world claps for everyone else's success while treating yours like a rumor. And still, the whisper says, keep climbing. Chosen people are built different because they're forced to be. We don't choose the path chooses us. And once it does, there's no going back. Because once you've felt the weight of destiny, ordinary will make you sick. The body keeps score when you're chosen. People don't talk about that part. They see the grind, the hustle, the discipline, but they don't see the panic attacks. They don't see you lying awake at 3 a.m., chest tight, heart racing, trying to figure out if you're chasing your dream or if your dream is chasing you. When I slowed down, I got sick. Head pounding, energy gone, appetite lost. It was like my spirit punished my body for resting. That's how serious the whisper felt. It was more than guilt, it was urgency. Like if I didn't move, the hand of God would lift, and I'd miss what was already written for me. That pressure broke me down more than once. I remember walking into rooms full of people and feeling like a ghost, smiling, laughing, playing the role, but inside, I was drowning. I'd excuse myself, go to the bathroom, lock the door, and sit on the edge of the sink just trying to breathe. Palms sweaty, shirt damp, eyes red, and you can't explain it to people. Try telling your friends, I feel like destiny is crushing me. They'll look at you like you're crazy. Try telling family, I can't relax because I feel God pulling me. They'll tell you to stop being dramatic, so you suffer in silence, and that's the coldest part of being chosen. You are surrounded, but you are alone. I had nights where my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Parties, women, opportunities. My crew wanted to turn up, and part of me wanted it too. But another part of me, the whisper part, said, you can't afford it, and if I ignored it, the sickness came back. Loneliness became my teacher. At first, it felt like punishment. Then I realized it was training. See, greatness is forged in solitude. When the noise fades, when the crowd disappears, when the applause is gone, that's when you meet yourself. That's when you find out if you're really built for the mountain. I stopped fearing the quiet. I started listening to it. That's when I began hearing my own thoughts more clearly, separating my voice from the voices of friends, family, even uncles who doubted me. And here's what I learned. Isolation isn't emptiness. It's space. Space to rewire. Space to reshape your identity. Space to argue with the old you until he finally surrenders. That's how I survived the panic attacks. That's how I learned to turn anxiety into energy. Instead of letting it drown me, I started letting it drive me. I told myself, if my body feels this pressure, it's because I'm carrying something heavy enough to matter. Chosen people live with this tension daily. We wake up heavy, we go to sleep restless, we carry burdens nobody else can see. But hidden inside that weight is the strength to keep climbing. Because one thing I know for sure, the mountain doesn't let weak minds reach the top. The sacrifice doesn't come with warning labels. Nobody tells you that chasing destiny will cost you birthdays, holidays, relationships, and pieces of yourself you thought you couldn't live without. It doesn't ask permission. It just takes. At first, I thought sacrifice meant money, like missing out on vacations, new cars, or luxuries. But money is the cheapest sacrifice you'll ever make. The real price is people. Friends who once called you brother but can't handle your hunger. Family who loves you until your ambition offends their comfort. Lovers who want you close but don't understand why your mind is always in the future. I learned quick. Greatness isolates. And the worst part is, you can't explain it. Try telling your friends, I can't come out tonight because my vision won't let me. They'll think you're arrogant. Try telling family, I'm sacrificing now so we can all eat later. They'll think you're selfish. But chosen people don't need approval. We need alignment. And alignment doesn't come cheap. I had to learn to be okay with being misunderstood. I had to accept that people who clapped for the old me wouldn't clap for the new me. That's when I realized some relationships are seasonal. And when the season ends, no amount of loyalty can save it. At first, that truth broke me. I hated being alone. I hated walking into rooms where I felt like a stranger to people who once swore they'd ride for me. But eventually, the isolation started shaping me. When the phone stopped ringing, I built habits. When the parties dried up, I found discipline. When the relationships ended, I learned focus. I started studying the greats like it was a second religion. I read, I listened, I wrote. I spoke life into myself. I trained my subconscious until it bent to my will. The same pressure that once caused panic now produced power. Sacrifice wasn't killing me, it was carving me. And slowly I began to see the trade-off. Every time I lost someone, I gained a sharper version of myself. Every time I missed a night out, I stacked a brick on my foundation. Every time I chose solitude over noise, I heard the whisper more clearly. Keep climbing. The old me would have begged people to understand. The new me stopped explaining. I realized the mountain isn't a group trip. It's a solo climb. And the ones meant to join you at the summit will meet you there, when it's time. That's the paradox of being chosen. You feel most abandoned when you're actually being most protected. God wasn't punishing me by removing people. He was clearing the path. And once I accepted that, the loneliness stopped feeling like death. It started feeling like destiny. There's a moment every chosen person faces the breaking point. It's the night when the silence gets so loud it feels like it's pressing against your skull. When the phone doesn't ring, the friends are gone, and even family feels like strangers. When you sit in your room staring at the ceiling, asking, why me? I hit that wall more than once, and every time I had two choices, quit or climb. Quitting would have been easier. I could have taken the safe jobs, settled into the same rhythm everybody else was living, convinced myself that my dreams were too big. I could have drowned the whisper in alcohol, in women, in distractions that always showed up when the pain got heavy. But chosen people don't get the luxury of quitting. Even when I tried, the whisper wouldn't let me. Even when I pretended I was done, the fire lit back up the next morning. That's when I realized being chosen isn't about strength, it's about surrender. You don't keep climbing because you're the toughest. You keep climbing because you can't stop, because something greater than you has already stamped your life, and no amount of running will erase it. That's why the mountain never leaves my mind. It's not just a metaphor, it's the reality of my existence. Every decision, every sacrifice, every heartbreak, every breakthrough, it's all part of the climb. And here's the truth. Being chosen hurts. It costs, it isolates, but it also transforms. Chosen people carry scars, but we also carry vision. We bleed in private, but we build in public. We lose crowds, but we gain clarity. That's why I no longer see myself as cursed. I see myself as assigned. And assignments aren't optional. When the bishop called me out at 12, I didn't understand it. I felt exposed, nervous, confused. But looking back now, I know that was the first time the mountain showed itself to me. The first time I realized I wasn't like everybody else. And I know I'm not the only one. Somebody reading this feels the same weight. Somebody else has heard the same whisper. Somebody else is climbing their own great mountain right now, wondering if they're crazy. Let me tell you, you're not crazy. You're chosen. And the proof isn't in the applause, it's in the pressure. It's in the nights you can't sleep because destiny is screaming louder than doubt. It's in the people who walk away because not everyone can breathe at your altitude. It's in the sacrifices that leave you empty but also make you sharper. That's what it means to be chosen. Not special, not perfect, not lucky, assigned. And once you accept that, the climb becomes your life. The mountain stops being your enemy and becomes your training ground. So if you feel that weight, if you feel that sickness when you try to stop, if you feel the fire in your chest even when your pockets are empty and your circle is shrinking, don't run from it. Don't call it a curse, it's proof. Proof that you're carrying something bigger than yourself. Proof that you're not here to blend in. Proof that you've been called to climb where most won't even attempt. This is the truth about chosen ones. We suffer, we sacrifice, we stumble, but we never stop. And that's why, no matter how heavy the burden gets, I keep climbing, because I know what waits at the top isn't just for me, it's for everyone my climb will touch. The Phenom by Jeda Ali, Chapter 2, The Great Mountain. The mountain doesn't ask for permission. It shows up in your dreams, your fears, your chest at night when you can't sleep. It doesn't knock, it kicks the door down and waits. I call it the Great Mountain. Some people call it destiny, others call it purpose, but whatever name you give it, once it reveals itself to you, you can never unsee it. The Great Mountain isn't a gentle hill with a paved road. It's jagged, brutal, covered in storms, and most people pretend it's not even there. They live at the bottom, comfortable in the valley, looking up only long enough to say, that's not for me. But if you're chosen, you don't get that choice. The mountain stalks you. You feel it in your body when you try to ignore it. You hear it in your thoughts when you try to drown it out with noise. It becomes a pressure that doesn't let up until you start climbing. For me, the mountain showed up as panic, as whispers in the night, as a heaviness in my chest that made me feel sick when I tried to live normal. People thought I was being dramatic, but the truth is, when you're chosen, normal will make you sick. That's because the mountain isn't just outside of you, it's inside you. The climb is psychological. The battle is between the conscious and the subconscious, the voice of who you are and the whisper of who you're meant to be. The conscious mind says, relax, you've done enough. The subconscious screams, if you stop now, everything you've dreamed dies with you. and the mountain listens to whichever voice you feed. The hardest part about the mountain isn't the height. It's the silence. At the base, everybody's with you. They cheer when you take your first steps. They say, "That's my guy," or "She's going somewhere." But as the incline rises, the voices fade. The air thins. People who once promised they'd ride with you start slipping back into the valley. And the higher you go, the quieter it gets. That silence is dangerous, because in silence, the old programming comes back. For me, it was the voice of my uncles, the whispers of my friends, the jokes, the doubts, the subtle digs that told me I was reaching too high. Those words didn't just disappear. They lived in my subconscious, waiting for the quiet to echo. And every time I climbed higher, those voices asked, "Who do you think you are?" That's the real war of the mountain. Not the rocks, not the storms, it's the war inside. See, your subconscious doesn't care about truth, it only cares about repetition. If you've heard, "You're not enough," 1,000 times, your subconscious believes it's law. If you've been told to be realistic more than you've been told to dream, your subconscious will sabotage you before you even try. That's why I had to rewire myself. I had to build new language, new programming. I couldn't just think positive. I had to flood my subconscious with new instructions until it bent. I told myself, "I am chosen. I am climbing. I am built for this." Not once, not twice, but daily, hourly. I wrote it, I spoke it, I slapped myself when negativity tried to creep in, because the old me wasn't going to let go easy. The mountain doesn't just test your legs, it tests your mind. And the truth, you can't conquer it with logic. Logic will tell you it's impossible. Logic will show you the statistics, the odds, the failures. Logic will tell you to settle down. But faith, the whisper, the subconscious, once it's rewired, will tell you to keep moving even when nothing makes sense. I've had nights where I was broke but felt rich in spirit, days where I was alone but felt surrounded by destiny. That's when I knew the rewiring was working. The mountain didn't shrink, but I grew. That's the secret. The mountain doesn't get smaller. You just get stronger. Climbing the mountain costs more than money, more than time. It costs your body. Nobody talks about how greatness feels in your chest, in your bones, in your nerves. They'll tell you about hustle, sacrifice, and hard work, but they won't tell you about the panic attacks, the sleepless nights, the way your body revolts when your mind tries to rest while your spirit is screaming, "Move." I used to think something was wrong with me. My chest would tighten like I was being crushed. My breath would come short, and I'd sit on the edge of my bed thinking I was about to pass out. I'd pray, cry, sometimes just sit in silence. And the next day, I'd still get up and keep moving. That's when I realized the mountain wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare. The truth is, your body keeps score. Every thought you allow in, every belief you hold on to, it shows up in your muscles, in your heartbeat, in your sleep. Carry doubt long enough, and it turns into anxiety. Carry fear long enough, and it eats at your stomach. Carry other people's expectations long enough, and you wake up drained before you've even started the day. The mountain will break you if you don't learn how to fight back from the inside out. For me, the fight looked crazy to outsiders. I argued with people, but I wasn't really arguing with them. I was arguing with my old self. Someone would mention lack, doubt, or fear, and it would set me off because I knew those words were trying to program me again. And I refused to let my subconscious go back to slavery. I learned to treat my thoughts like weights in a gym. Every time I pushed back against negativity, I got stronger. Every time I rejected fear, I built endurance. Every time I chose faith over logic, I climbed higher. The mountain exposed my weakness, but it also revealed my strength. And slowly I began to see isolation not as punishment, but as training. The late nights alone weren't empty. They were sharpening me. The panic wasn't killing me, it was shaping me. The silence wasn't absence, it was instruction. Chosen ones don't just climb with their feet. We climb with our minds, our bodies, our spirits. Every part of us is tested. Every part of us is stretched. And the higher we go, the more brutal the climb becomes. But here's the paradox. The pain is proof. If the mountain wasn't real, the climb wouldn't hurt. So now, when I feel my chest tighten, when the panic comes, when the silence grows loud, I don't run from it. I recognize it. I say, this is the cost. This is the sign. This is proof I'm still on the mountain. And with that, I climb again. The mountain will strip you, not just of money, not just of sleep, but of people. And that's the price that hurts the most. At first, I thought the climb would bring me closer to my circle. I thought my wins would be their wins, my sacrifices their sacrifices. But the higher I climbed, the more I noticed the gap widening. Friends who once called me brother stopped picking up the phone. Family who once told me they loved me started questioning if I was losing my mind. Lovers who once swore they were ride or die couldn't handle the fact that my vision always came first. And I can't even blame them. The mountain isn't for everybody. Some people were never built for the climb. Their lungs aren't trained for the altitude. Their faith isn't ready for the thin air. But chosen ones don't get to choose comfort. We don't get to say, I'll stay low so I don't lose anyone. Because the whisper won't let us. The assignment won't let us. The mountain won't let us. I had to learn to stop taking it personal. Losing people didn't mean they hated me. It meant the mountain was revealing what was temporary. It was cutting away what couldn't survive at the top. At first it broke me. I hated the loneliness. I hated feeling like I was speaking a language nobody understood. But slowly I started to see the trade. Every time I lost someone, I gained clarity. Every time I was misunderstood, I found deeper discipline. Every time the circle shrank, my spirit stretched wider. That's the part people don't see. They see you shining later, but they don't see you crying in silence, wondering why the ones you loved couldn't love your vision. They don't see you scrolling through old messages, remembering when the group chat was alive. They don't see you sitting in your car after another no, fighting tears because the mountain feels too steep. But chosen ones learn, the mountain doesn't just elevate you, it separates you. And separation feels like death until you realize it's protection. Because the truth is, the higher you climb, the less weight you can carry. Some relationships aren't bad, they're just heavy. Some people aren't enemies, they're just not equipped. And if you try to drag them with you, you'll both fall. So now, when people walk away, I don't beg them to stay. I don't chase, I don't explain. I just nod and keep climbing, because I know the ones meant to breathe this air will meet me at the summit. That's the lesson of the mountain. It costs you, but it also clears you. And once you accept that, the loneliness stops feeling like loss. It starts feeling like preparation. Every climb has a breaking point. That night when the silence grows so heavy it feels like it's pressing against your skull. When your phone doesn't ring, when your friends disappear, when even your family feels like strangers. That night when you're lying flat on your back staring at the ceiling, asking yourself, why me? I've been there more than once. Nights when my chest locked up so tight I thought I was dying. Nights when I screamed at God, if you really chose me, why does it hurt this much? Why does it feel like punishment? Nights when I almost convinced myself to quit, to let go of the dream, get a safe job, live a safe life, blend in with the valley. But every time I tried, the whisper wouldn't let me. It woke me up at 3 a.m. It dragged me out of bed when my body begged for rest. It reminded me of the prophecy. The moments when destiny showed its hand, the times I couldn't deny that something bigger than me was pulling me forward. That's when I understood. Being chosen isn't about strength, it's about surrender. The strongest people quit. The smartest people settle. The most talented people give up. But the chosen don't stop. Not because we're better, but because we can't. The whisper won't let us. The mountain won't let us. Destiny won't let us. And here's the paradox. The breaking point isn't the end, it's the threshold. Every time I hit it, every time I thought I couldn't go further, every time I cried until my chest ached, I came out sharper, stronger, lighter. The pain didn't vanish, but it became fuel. The silence didn't crush me, it carved me. That's how I learned the mountain's secret. The climb doesn't kill you, it remakes you. Chosen ones don't avoid the breaking point, we pass through it. And on the other side, we find a version of ourselves we didn't know existed. So now, when I feel that breaking point rise when the silence swells, when the panic shakes me, when the loneliness wraps around me, I don't call it the end. I call it proof. Proof that I'm still on the path. Proof that I haven't settled. Proof that the mountain is still shaping me into the man I was always meant to become. And with that knowing, I rise. I lace my shoes. I square my shoulders, and I climb again. The Phenom by Jeda Ali. Chapter 3. Sacrifice and Isolation. Sacrifice sounds noble when you say it out loud. It looks powerful when it's written on a wall or preached on a stage. But when you live it, sacrifice feels like heartbreak. Nobody warns you that chasing destiny will take pieces of you thought you couldn't live without. Nobody tells you that yes to your calling means no to birthdays, holidays, and moments with the people you love most. Nobody tells you that the higher you climb, the more you'll pay in silence. I learned it the hard way. At first, I thought sacrifice meant money, missing out on vacations, driving an old car when everybody else was flexing something new, eating cheap meals so I could invest in my vision. But money turned out to be the cheapest sacrifice of all. The real cost was people. Friends who didn't understand why I couldn't show up anymore. Family who felt offended that my priorities had shifted. Relationships that crumbled because my focus wasn't divided. It was locked in on the mountain. And here's the truth. Sacrifice doesn't just isolate you from others. It isolates you from yourself. There were nights I didn't even recognize the man in the mirror. The boy who once wanted to please everybody was gone, replaced by someone who refused to compromise, someone who stared back with tired eyes but an unshakable fire. That's the cruel beauty of sacrifice. It kills who you were to make room for who you must become. In isolation, it's the furnace where that transformation happens. Sacrifice doesn't announce itself. It creeps up on you. One day you wake up and realize you haven't been to a birthday in months. You scroll through pictures of people you used to be close with, smiling at parties you weren't invited to. Or maybe you were, but you didn't go, because the whisper said, "Not tonight. Work." At first, you think it's temporary. You tell yourself, "I'll make it up to them later. I'll explain when they see the results." But time keeps passing, and the gap keeps widening. And then, one day, you realize there is no making it up. The people you lost aren't waiting for you to circle back. They've already built a life without you. That's when sacrifice starts to feel like betrayal, not betrayal of them, betrayal of yourself. Because the human part of you wants connection, love, family, but the chosen part of you knows you can't have both the mountain and the valley. You can't hold hands with everybody and still climb. Isolation becomes the tax you pay for vision. I remember nights when my house was full of people, music playing, drinks flowing, and still I felt alone. Because even in the crowd, nobody spoke my language. Nobody understood the war in my head. They wanted to party. I wanted to break chains. They wanted fun. I wanted freedom, and I couldn't explain it without sounding arrogant, without sounding crazy. So I learned to stop explaining. Isolation is cruel, but it's also honest. It strips away the illusion that everybody's supposed to come with you. It forces you to face the truth. Some people were only assigned to your beginning, not your destiny. And once you accept that, the silence stops feeling like a curse. It starts feeling like clarity. Because in the end, sacrifice is not about losing. It's about making room. Room for growth, room for vision, room for the man you're becoming. The thing about isolation is, it doesn't just test your patience. It tests your identity. When the noise fades, when the people leave, when the rooms empty out, you're left with nothing but your own reflection. And sometimes that reflection doesn't look familiar. There were nights I looked in the mirror and asked myself, who are you becoming? Not in a proud way, not in a look how far you've come way. More like, is this worth it? Are you sure you're not losing yourself in the process? Because sacrifice isn't clean. It's messy. It comes with doubt, with second guessing, with guilt that creeps in when you see others living what looks like normal lives. Couples smiling, families laughing, groups of friends growing old together while you sit in a room by yourself, staring at the dream that keeps demanding more. And the worst part? Nobody claps for you while you're in it. People only clap at the finish line. They don't cheer while you're bleeding. They don't post your struggles. They don't celebrate the nights you go without so you can invest in your vision. They don't see the tears, the arguments with yourself, the war between wanting comfort and needing purpose. That's why isolation breaks so many chosen ones. It convinces them they're alone in the fight. But here's what I learned. Isolation isn't proof that you're abandoned. It's proof that you are set apart. If you can learn to live in the silence without losing your mind, you'll find a power most people never touch. You'll hear the whisper more clearly. You'll see yourself without filters. You'll realize that the pain of being alone is nothing compared to the pain of betraying your assignment. And once you understand that, sacrifice stops feeling like loss. It feels like alignment, because the truth is, the mountain was never meant to be climbed with a crowd. It was always meant to strip you down until nothing is left but you, your faith, and the whisper that won't let you quit. Well, there's a strange thing that happens in isolation. You start arguing with ghosts. Not the kind that haunt houses, but the kind that live inside your head. The voices of people who doubted you, the laughter of friends who told you you were reaching too high, the warnings from family who said you should quit and play it safe. Even when they're not in the room, they echo. And in the silence, their words feel louder than ever. I used to replay those voices until they felt like truth. Uncle Billy saying, "You should quit being a creative and get a real job." Old friends telling me, "You ain't made it yet." Family whispering, "He thinks he's better than us." I carried those sentences like weights on my back, dragging them up the mountain with me. Until one day, I snapped. I realized isolation wasn't just about being separated from people. It was about being separated from their language. Because words are seeds. And if you let the wrong ones plant in your subconscious, they'll choke out your vision before it ever grows. So I declared war on those ghosts. I rewrote the language. I trained myself to respond differently. When negativity tried to creep in, I shut it down. Sometimes I slapped myself awake, literally. I refused to let old programming run my life. Isolation taught me that your mind is either your biggest ally or your worst enemy, and if you don't take control of it, those ghosts will. Sacrifice gave me space. Isolation gave me clarity. Together, they gave me the tools to fight back, not against people, but against the patterns that were trying to keep me trapped. And the deeper I leaned into that fight, the lighter I became. The mountain didn't shrink, but the weight I carried did. Because when you cut off the wrong voices, you finally hear your own. Oh, every chosen one reaches a moment where sacrifice feels unbearable. Not just uncomfortable, unbearable. The silence is too loud, the loss is too heavy, the ghost too convincing. You start asking questions that feel dangerous. What if they were right? What if I really am crazy? What if I've wasted years chasing something that doesn't exist? That's the breaking point of isolation. I've been there, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the pain in my chest was destiny pushing me forward or just my body breaking under the weight. I've walked through rooms full of people and felt invisible, like I was already a ghost. I've sat in cars outside events I didn't want to be at, fighting back tears, telling myself, "Don't fold, not now." And every time, I had a choice, surrender to the loneliness or let it sharpen me. That's when I realized the truth. Isolation doesn't break chosen ones. It forges them. The mountain strips away distractions for a reason. It takes the people who can't carry the altitude. It cuts away the comfort that slows you down. It forces you into silence so you can hear the whisper without distortion. Isolation is painful, yes, but it's also proof. Proof that you're in the middle of transformation. Proof that your old life can't follow you into your new one. Proof that destiny is too expensive to be shared with everybody. So now, when I feel the sting of sacrifice, when I feel the chill of isolation, I don't call it a curse. I call it training. Because the man I was could never survive the summit. Only the man I'm becoming can. And the more I climb, the more I realize I wasn't abandoned, I was refined. The silence didn't kill me, it prepared me, and that's why, even when the nights get cold, even when the rooms get empty, even when the ghosts get loud, I keep moving. Because the only thing worse than being alone on the mountain is quitting before you reach the top. and I refused to quit. The Phenom by Jeda Ali. Chapter 4, Paradigm and Linguistic Shift. The most powerful prison isn't made of bars or concrete. It's built from language. I didn't understand that at first. I thought I was trapped by my circumstances, by money, by people around me who couldn't see my vision. But the real cage was in my own mouth. The words I spoke, the phrases I repeated, the sentences I allowed to live in my subconscious. Growing up, I heard it everywhere. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't reach too high. Be realistic. Those words seemed harmless, but they shaped how I thought, and how I thought shaped how I moved. And then one day, it clicked, my paradigm. The system of beliefs I lived in wasn't mine. It was borrowed, programmed, inherited. And if I didn't break it, I'd spend my whole life building walls around myself with the bricks of someone else's language. That's when I started changing the way I spoke. Not just in public, not just on social media. Every day, every hour to myself, out loud, in the mirror, in the car. When doubt tried to creep in, I didn't just think differently, I spoke differently. Because words are seeds, and every time you speak, you're planting something. I stopped saying, I can't afford this. I started saying, I'm creating the wealth to own this. I stopped saying, I'm tired of struggling. I started saying, I'm building strength. I stopped saying, maybe one day. I started saying, today I'm moving closer. And little by little, my reality began to shift. The crazy part? People noticed. They didn't just notice the words, they noticed the energy. They treated me different, respected me different, not because my bank account had changed overnight, but because my paradigm had, my spirit had. And when your inside world shifts, your outside world has no choice but to catch up. That's when I realized the first climb isn't the mountain outside, it's the one inside your mind. Now, shifting your paradigm isn't glamorous, it's war. The old you fights like hell to stay alive. The old programming doesn't want to die quietly. It wants to drag you back into the same cycles you swore you'd escape. That's why I used to slap myself when negative thoughts tried to creep in. People laugh when I say that, but it was survival. If I caught myself speaking fear, doubt, or lack, I'd snap out of it by force. I refused to let those words take root, because I knew what was at stake. If I didn't take control of my language would take control of me. The subconscious doesn't care if what you say is true, it just obeys. It hears your words, records them, and builds your reality out of them. That's why when I spoke lack, I lived lack. When I spoke fear, I lived fear. When I spoke I'm not enough, life mirrored it back to me. But when I began to speak life, abundance, growth, the mirror shifted. It wasn't easy. Some nights I argued out loud with myself. The old me whispering, you're not built for this. You're dreaming too big. The new me firing back, shut up. We're not living in fear anymore. We're not shrinking to make other people comfortable. We're not speaking death when we need life. It felt like two people inside my chest fighting for control. But the more I chose new language, the weaker the old me became. That's the real paradigm shift. Killing the voice that wants to keep you ordinary, so the voice that calls you extraordinary can finally breathe. And once you cross that line, once you see how powerful your words are, you'll never go back. Because when you control your language, you control your reality. The shift didn't just change my words, it changed the way I carried myself. See, language is more than what you speak. It's the posture you hold, the energy you release, the way you walk into a room. When I changed how I talked, my body followed. My confidence followed. My reality followed. People started saying, you look different. But I hadn't changed my clothes, I hadn't bought new shoes, I hadn't suddenly hit a jackpot. What they were seeing was the new paradigm leaking through my presence. That's when I understood something crucial. People don't respond to who you are, they respond to who you believe you are. When I believed I was broke, stuck, and unlucky, the world treated me like it. When I believed I was chosen, powerful, destined, the world treated me like that too. And the difference was never money. The difference was language. I started catching myself even in casual talk. No more. I'm just trying to get by. No more. You know me, I'm always struggling. I refuse to make jokes out of my own limitations. Instead, I replaced them with phrases like, I'm building, I'm on my way, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. It sounded small, but it wasn't. Every time I spoke those words, it was like laying a brick on a new foundation, a foundation of abundance, a foundation of belief, and brick by brick my world rebuilt itself. The more I shifted, the more opportunities showed up. People who used to overlook me started paying attention. Doors I thought were locked cracked open. And it wasn't because the world had changed, it was because my paradigm had. I wasn't waiting for reality to validate me anymore. I was speaking reality into existence. And the truth is, once you learn that power, you can never be the same again. Here's what I discovered. The old paradigm doesn't just die quietly. It sends people to test you. Friends, family, co-workers. They'll repeat the same language you're trying to kill. They'll say things like, don't get your hopes up, or be realistic, or money isn't everything. And if you're not careful, you'll let their words slip back into your spirit. I had to learn not every conversation deserves my agreement. When someone said, man, times are hard, I stopped replying, yeah, you're right. Instead, I'd say, I hear you, but I'm focused on solutions. When someone said, you'll never pull that off, I didn't argue. I just smiled because I knew my paradigm was already building proof they couldn't see yet. The old me would have debated. The new me just kept moving, because the moment you argue too much, you give their language space in your mind. And I couldn't afford that, not when I had fought so hard to evict the old programming. That's when I understood why some relationships had to end. It wasn't that I didn't love people. It wasn't that I thought I was better. It was that their language was poison to the soil I was planting in. And no matter how much you water good seeds, if you let poison drip in, nothing will grow. So I had to protect my soil, and the more I did, the more clear it became. Shifting your paradigm is not just a mental game, it's spiritual warfare. Because when you change your words, you don't just change your reality, you threaten everything around you that's comfortable with the old one. That's why people resist, that's why they mock, that's why they tell you to tone it down. But once you taste the freedom of a new paradigm, you'll never shrink back into the old one again. Because the truth is, language is life. And when you change it, you change everything. The breakthrough came the night I caught myself laughing. Not because life was perfect, not even close. My bank account was low, my relationships were shaky, my body was exhausted, but I laughed anyway because for the first time I realized I wasn't speaking like a victim anymore. I wasn't repeating the script I had inherited. I was writing my own, and the freedom in that moment felt bigger than money, bigger than success, bigger than recognition. It felt like finally breathing air I didn't know I had been choking for years. That's the power of a paradigm shift. You go from surviving to creating. Once I changed my language, my environment had no choice but to respond. I started attracting people who spoke life, who believed in possibility, who refused to settle for average. I started walking into rooms I once thought were off limits, and instead of shrinking, I stood tall, because my words had already prepared me for them. Opportunities that used to scare me became normal. Conversations that once felt out of reach felt natural. I wasn't hoping to become great. I was aligning with the greatness I'd already claimed in my language. And here's the truth. If you want to change your life, you don't start with money. You don't start with connections. You don't even start with hard work. You start with words. Because your words shape your thoughts shape your beliefs shape your actions, and your actions shape your destiny. And once I understood that, I finally understood why the mountain felt so heavy at times. It wasn't the climb itself. It was the weight of the old paradigm I was still carrying. But once I dropped it, the air got clearer, the climb got lighter. And for the first time, I knew the mountain wasn't just about reaching the top, it was about becoming someone who could live at the top without crumbling. And in that kind of transformation always begins with a shift in language. The Phenom by Jeda Ali. Chapter 5. Conscious versus subconscious. The conscious mind is the driver, but the subconscious is the engine. That's what most people don't realize. They try to think positive for a few hours a day, but deep down their subconscious is still programmed with fear, doubt, and limitation. And because the subconscious runs almost everything we do on autopilot, the conscious mind loses the battle every time. I had to learn this the hard way. I remember nights when I'd speak affirmations, I'm powerful, I'm chosen, I'm destined for greatness. But inside, I still felt like the broken kid who was told to quit being a creative and get a real job. And guess which belief won? Not the one I said out loud for 10 minutes, the one I'd repeated in silence for years. That's when I understood the subconscious doesn't respond to casual visits. It responds to consistency. It's like soil. Whatever you water daily will grow, whether it's weeds or flowers. So I had to reprogram it. Not once. Not here and there. Every day, every hour. I started repeating the truth until it felt like breathing. I flooded my subconscious with new images, new words, new emotions until the old programming had no room left to live. And slowly, I noticed something powerful. My actions began to change without me forcing them. I didn't have to try to be disciplined. I just was. I didn't have to fake confidence. It flowed. I didn't have to pretend I belonged in certain rooms. I walked in naturally. Because once your subconscious is aligned with your conscious vision, resistance disappears. The war quiets down, and that's when you realize the real mountain was never outside. It was inside your own mind all along. The subconscious is powerful because it doesn't argue. If you tell it you're broke, it accepts it. If you tell it you're unworthy, it accepts it. If you tell it you're destined, it accepts that too. It never asks, "Are you sure?" It just obeys. That's why I realize most people aren't living their dreams. Not because they don't want to, but because their subconscious never got the memo. They say, "I want to be successful," but deep down their programming says, "I don't deserve it." And the subconscious always wins. I lived in that conflict for years. On the surface, I looked ambitious. I was grinding, creating, building. But underneath, my subconscious was still carrying the language of lack. Still carrying the weight of family doubts, still carrying the voices of friends telling me I was reaching too high. And that's why even when I succeeded, I sabotaged myself, because the subconscious will always pull you back to what it believes is normal. So I had to teach it a new normal. Every day I fed it images of abundance. I wrote down the life I wanted as if I already lived it. I cut out pictures, created visions, surrounded myself with words that lined up with my destiny instead of my doubts. And most importantly, I added emotion to it. Because emotion is the language the subconscious listens to. If you say, "I'm successful," but feel fear, the subconscious hears fear. But if you say, "I'm successful," and feel it deep in your bones, see it, taste it, live it, the subconscious has no choice but to accept it. That's when the rewiring began. That's when my reality started bending to the new belief, not because I wished for it, because I taught my subconscious a new identity, and once your subconscious accepts the new you, nothing can stop the transformation. Here's the crazy part. Your subconscious was programmed before you even knew what programming was. Think about it. As kids, we don't choose our beliefs. We absorb them from parents, from teachers, from TV, from music, from the people around us who were just repeating what they were taught. By the time we're adults, we're walking around with someone else's voice running our lives on autopilot. That's why I used to doubt myself without even knowing why. That's why I felt guilty chasing greatness. That's why I struggled with money, relationships, even self-love, because deep down, my subconscious was still running on scripts that weren't mine. Breaking that was like breaking chains you can't see. It took work, long nights, hard conversations with myself. But every time I caught an old belief rising up, I asked myself one question. Who told me that? Who told me I wasn't good enough? Who told me creativity wasn't a real path? Who told me money was evil? Who told me greatness was for other people but not me? And every time I traced it back, it wasn't my own voice. It was borrowed. That's when I realized most of us are prisoners of voices that aren't even ours. So I started rejecting them out loud. I'd say, "That's not my belief anymore. That doesn't belong to me. I replaced it with truth over and over until the new voice grew louder than the old one. And little by little, the subconscious began to obey. The guilt faded, the fear weakened, the hesitation started turning into confidence. Because once you identify the lies, you can rewire them with truth. And when that happens, you don't just change how you think, you change who you are. The subconscious doesn't just shape how you think, it shapes how you act without you realizing it. That's why two people can be given the same opportunity, and one will flourish while the other will fumble. It's not about luck, it's about programming. When my subconscious was wired with doubt, I'd sabotage myself. I'd delay making calls. I'd hesitate to step into rooms where I knew I belonged. I'd talk myself out of taking risks, then blame the world when nothing happened. But once I reprogrammed it, my actions shifted on autopilot. I didn't need to pump myself up anymore. I just moved. I didn't overthink every step. I trusted my instincts. I didn't waste time debating if I was ready. I acted like I was already chosen. That's when I realized something powerful. Success isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you already are. The subconscious had buried that truth under years of lies, but the moment I dug it up, everything changed. I started walking into rooms differently. Not arrogant, certain. I started creating without fear of judgment because I wasn't waiting for approval anymore. I started treating money differently, not as something scarce, but as something attracted to purpose. And every time I reinforced it, the subconscious locked it in deeper. That's why repetition is so critical. Not one day, not 1 week, daily, hourly, until the new you becomes the only you. And once that happens, you don't have to fight for change anymore. You are the change. I'll never forget the night it all came together. I was sitting alone, no crowd, no noise, just me and my thoughts. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting myself. The conscious and subconscious weren't at war anymore. They were in alignment. And that alignment felt like peace. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about recognition. It wasn't about proving anybody wrong. It was about finally proving myself right, about finally living as the person I'd always been underneath the programming. That's when I realized the conscious mind is the captain, but the subconscious is the crew. And if your crew doesn't believe in the mission, the ship will never sail. But once they're aligned, once the captain and crew move in the same direction, nothing can stop the journey. From then on, I walked differently, talked differently, created differently. Opportunities didn't feel random anymore. They felt like alignment. Doors didn't just open, they opened at the exact time I was ready. Because the subconscious, once rewired, doesn't just change your thoughts, it changes your destiny. And here's the part most people miss. Greatness isn't about talent alone. It's about programming. You can have the best ideas, the most drive, the biggest dreams, but if your subconscious is still wired for smallness, you'll shrink every time. But if you dare to rewire it, if you dare to plant new language, new beliefs, new visions, your subconscious will take you places your conscious mind never thought possible. That's the secret, that's the climb, that's the war within. And the victory doesn't come when you reach the top of the mountain. It comes the day you conquer the mountain inside your own mind. The Phenom by Jeda Ali. Chapter 6. Relationships and Cost. Relationships were always a test of my climb. Some people added fuel to the fire inside me, while others tried to put it out without even realizing it. I used to think love and friendship were automatic, that because someone was close to me, they would understand me. But the mountain showed me otherwise. It revealed that proximity doesn't equal support, and that not everyone connected to you is connected to your purpose. The truth is, relationships come with a price tag, and most people never count the cost. I learned early that chasing greatness makes people uncomfortable. Some will say, "Why are you working so hard?" Or, "You don't have to take it that seriously." What they don't understand is that this isn't just work for me, it's calling, it's breath, it's life. But the moment you start moving different, people feel it. Friends who once laughed with you suddenly look at you with suspicion. Family who once hugged you start whispering behind your back. Not always because they hate you, but because your climb reminds them of the climb they never took. And that's when you realize, Isolation isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's protection. Love cost me too. I wanted someone to understand me, to ride with me, to believe in me without me having to explain every detail. But the truth is, very few people can love a person chasing destiny. They see the sacrifices, the late nights, the obsession with the dream, and instead of feeling secure, they feel neglected. I had to learn that chasing greatness means you'll break some hearts along the way, including your own. Not because you're careless, but because you can't split yourself in two. You can't give all of you to purpose and all of you to people at the same time. Some couldn't handle that, and I had to let them go. But relationships also taught me loyalty. The ones who stayed, the ones who didn't flinch, the ones who clapped when I won, even if they were losing, that's priceless. Those bonds became my anchor when the climb felt too heavy. The cost is high, but the reward is higher, because when you find the ones who see your destiny and not just your dirt, you found something rare. You found family that isn't just blood, it's covenant. And that's when I realized relationships either drain you or sustain you, and destiny demands you know the difference. So I count the cost. Every friend, every partner, every connection. I ask myself, do they fuel the climb or do they fight it? Because at the end of the day, relationships aren't free. They either cost you your dream or they cost you your comfort. And I've already chosen. I'll pay the price of loneliness, heartbreak, even misunderstanding, but I will not pay the price of purpose, because purpose is too expensive to waste, and that's the truth about relationships and cost. The Phenom by Jeda Ali. Chapter 7. Money and Identity. Money isn't just paper, it's language, and depending on how you grew up, you either learned to speak it fluently or you were taught to fear it. For me, money was always complicated. In my family, it felt like a ghost. Always talked about, rarely seen. Bills were real, but wealth was a rumor. In every conversation around money came laced with fear. We can't afford that. Don't waste your money. Rich people don't care about us. That language became part of me. It shaped how I saw myself. Even when I started making money, I carried the identity of lack. I'd spend it fast, lose it fast, or give it away too quickly, because deep down, I didn't believe I was worthy of keeping it. The mountain forced me to confront that. I realized money doesn't change who you are. It exposes who you are. And until I changed my relationship with myself, I'd never have a healthy relationship with money. I had to stop seeing it as a stranger. I had to stop treating it like an enemy. I had to start seeing it as a reflection of how I valued my own time, my own gifts, my own identity, because money is energy, and energy flows to where it's respected, not feared. That's when everything shifted. I stopped saying, I'm broke. I started saying, I'm building wealth. I stopped thinking, money is hard to get. I started thinking, money comes to me when I walk in purpose. I stopped seeing myself as someone chasing a dollar and started seeing myself as someone dollars chase. And little by little, the reflection changed, not just in my account, but in my confidence, because money wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about identity. The first breakthrough came when I realized poverty wasn't just financial. It was mental. I had met people with money who still lived poor in their minds. They hoarded, they feared losing it, they lived like slaves to a number in their bank account. And I had also met people with almost nothing who carried themselves like kings and queens because their identity wasn't chained to lack. That's when I saw it. Poverty is a paradigm, and if you don't shift it, you can win the lottery and still end up broke. You can make 6 figures and still feel empty. You can touch millions and still lose it because your subconscious will always pull you back to what it thinks you deserve. For years, I thought money would give me worth. But the truth is, until you know your worth, money won't stay. I had to stop chasing it like it was my savior. I had to start treating it like a partner. And a partner respects boundaries, respects discipline, respects vision. That's when I started budgeting differently. Not just numbers on paper, but energy on purpose. Every dollar had a job, every investment had intention, every sacrifice had meaning, and slowly, I began to realize the way I handled money was the way I handled myself. If I disrespected it, I was disrespecting my own future. If I wasted it, I was wasting my own time. If I feared it, I was really fearing myself. Money became my mirror. And the more I respected it, the more it respected me. That's when identity and money finally met, because wealth doesn't start in your pocket. It starts in your mind. I used to think being generous meant giving until I had nothing left. I thought that was love. I thought that was loyalty. But really, it was lack disguised as kindness. I was giving away what I didn't even have for myself, and then wondering why I felt empty, unappreciated, or even resentful afterward. The truth hit me one day. Real generosity isn't draining yourself. It's pouring from overflow. See, when you give from lack, you train people to expect you to bleed for them. But when you build yourself first, when you fill your own cup, your giving becomes sustainable. It becomes powerful. It becomes an extension of identity, not a replacement for it. That was a hard lesson for me because I had been taught to feel guilty for wanting more. I had been programmed to believe that success meant selfishness and money meant corruption. But I started to see that the opposite was true. The more I owned my identity, the more money became a tool, not a trap. Money wasn't evil. It was neutral. It was a magnifier. If you're broken, money makes you more broken. If you're whole, money makes you more whole. If you're selfish, money magnifies it. If you're generous, money expands it. So I had to ask myself, who am I without money? And when I found that answer, money stopped being something I chased. It became something that flowed naturally because my identity was already whole. That's when I realized the richest people aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones who know exactly who they are, with or without it. Money tested my relationships in ways I didn't expect. When I had nothing, everyone was cool. Nobody asked me for much because they knew I didn't have it. But the moment I started building, the moment checks started coming in, the dynamic shifted. Suddenly, people I loved looked at me like I was an ATM instead of a person. They didn't see the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the grind it took to earn it. They just saw results. And instead of celebrating, some tried to claim a piece of it. At first, I gave freely. I thought helping everyone around me would prove I was loyal, prove I hadn't changed. But the more I gave, the more I realized money doesn't fix relationships. It exposes them. The ones who truly loved me didn't measure it by what I handed them. They measured it by who I was, with or without money. But the ones who were secretly envious, secretly doubtful, secretly bitter, the moment money showed up, their masks came off. And that cut deep. Because I wasn't just losing dollars, I was losing trust. I was losing bonds I thought were unbreakable. I was losing the illusion that everyone who said I love you actually meant it. But even in that pain, I learned, money doesn't destroy relationships. It reveals the truth about them. And once I saw the truth, I couldn't unsee it. It forced me to draw boundaries. It forced me to respect my work, my worth, and my wallet. And most of all, it forced me to realize protecting my money was really protecting my identity. Because at the end of the day, money isn't about who asks for it. It's about who you become while you earn it. The real turning point came when I stopped asking, how much money can I make? And started asking, who am I becoming in the process? Because money without identity is empty. That's why so many people hit big numbers and still feel hollow. They chase a dollar but never build a self. They buy the car, the house, the clothes, but inside they're still broke. I refuse to live like that. I started treating every dollar as proof of alignment. Not proof that I was better than anyone else, but proof that I was walking in purpose. Proof that I was honoring my gifts. Proof that I was no longer shrinking to fit into other people's expectations. And the more I aligned, the more money responded. Opportunities came not because I begged, but because I was ready. Checks cleared not because I chased, but because I carried myself like someone who deserved them. That's when I learned the truth. Money follows identity. If you see yourself as unworthy, you'll always find a way to lose it. If you see yourself as chosen, as capable, as disciplined, money has no choice but to match that energy. So I stopped running after it. I stopped letting it define me. Instead, I let it serve me. And the more I did, the more I understood. Wealth isn't the destination. It's the reflection. the reflection of who you believe you are. And now, when I look at money, I don't see fear anymore. I don't see lack. I don't see struggle. I see a mirror, and in that mirror I see the Phenom. The Phenom by Jeda Ali. Chapter 8, How I Got the Name, the Phenom. The name didn't come from me. It came from what people saw in me. From the very beginning, creativity wasn't something I chased. It was something that flowed out of me. In school, while most kids were struggling to put words together, I was writing poems that made grown adults stop and pay attention. I didn't know why it came so naturally, but I knew it was different. Teachers started pulling me aside. "Jeda, there's something about you," they'd say. My mom would get calls from school, not because I was in trouble, but because I was creating something beyond my years. That was the first time I realized words had power, and that power lived inside of me. But it wasn't just poems. It was music, too. Singing competitions, freestyle moments, melodies I could catch out of thin air. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I was just expressing myself. But the way people reacted told me I had something rare. It was effortless. That's the word people used. They'd look at me and shake their heads, like, "How does he do that?" That's when the name started floating around. "The kid's a phenom." At first, I brushed it off. I thought it was just hype, just something people said to gas me up. But the more I created, the more I saw it wasn't hype. It was truth. Every time I put my heart into something, it came alive in a way that drew people in. And slowly, I started to believe it myself. Not in an arrogant way, but in a way that made me carry more responsibility. Because when you're called the Phenom, people expect more. They expect consistency. They expect greatness. And that expectation can either crush you or sharpen you. For me, it sharpened me. The first time I heard it directly, I remember the weight of the word hitting me different. It wasn't a nickname like Jay or Slim. It wasn't something casual. It was spoken with intention, almost like a prophecy. People weren't just calling me talented, they were calling me chosen. And chosen comes with pressure. See, being a phenom isn't just about skill. It's about being set apart. And when you're set apart, people watch you differently. They watch for every move, every slip, every win, every loss. Some cheer, some doubt, some secretly hope you'll fall, just so they don't have to face the reflection of their own unfulfilled potential. I started to notice that. When I won singing competitions, the room clapped, but certain faces stayed still. When I put myself on the radio, strangers congratulated me louder than my own family did. I started realizing being the Phenom wasn't just a blessing, it was a battle, because the name carried expectation, and expectation carries enemies. But here's the part that stuck with me. I never gave myself that name. It came from outside. That meant it was seen in me before I even fully saw it in myself. And if other people could recognize it without me asking, that meant it was real. That meant it wasn't a mask, it wasn't an act, it was identity. So instead of running from the weight of it, I started leaning into it. I told myself, if they see the Phenom, I need to live like the Phenom. Not fake it, not hype it, but embody it, because sometimes the world names you before you're ready, so that when the time comes, you'll already know who you are. The truth is, being called the Phenom wasn't always easy to carry. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I could really live up to it. The word itself sounded bigger than me, like it belonged to someone who had already made it, someone on magazine covers, someone untouchable. And here I was, still grinding, still broke at times, still figuring life out. But that's the paradox of destiny. It names you before you become it. I started to see that the Phenom wasn't describing who I was in the moment. It was describing who I was becoming. It wasn't about perfection. It was about potential. It was a reminder that the greatness inside me was real, even if my circumstances didn't reflect it yet. That shift in perspective changed everything. Instead of doubting myself, I used the name as fuel. Every time I heard it, it reminded me to rise to the standard, to not cut corners, to not settle, to not play small just to make others comfortable. Of course, not everyone liked that. Some people rolled their eyes. Phenom, huh? We'll see others tried to test me, tried to pull me back into old ways, tried to prove I wasn't who they said I was. But even their doubt pushed me, because every time they said I couldn't, I heard destiny whisper back, "But you will." And slowly I grew into the name, not overnight, not in a straight line, but piece by piece, battle by battle, creation by creation, until one day I didn't just hear the name, I owned it. The more I embraced the name, the more I realized it wasn't about me, it was about what I carried. Being the Phenom wasn't just about talent, it was about responsibility. I had the ability to unlock things in people they couldn't see in themselves. When I worked with artists, I pulled out sides of their voices they never knew existed. When I spoke to people, I sparked belief where doubt used to live. It wasn't just my gift, it was my assignment. That's why the name stuck. It wasn't hype, it was evidence, but evidence comes with sacrifice. There were nights I wanted to quit, times I wanted to trade in my gift for a normal life. No expectations, no eyes on me, no weight of destiny pressing on my chest, just peace. But then I'd remember, normal wasn't written for me. Normal was never my calling. Every time I tried to shrink, life reminded me, the name reminded me, destiny reminded me. And with that reminder came isolation. Because being the Phenom meant I couldn't move like everyone else. I couldn't think like everyone else. I couldn't party, waste time, or treat my creativity like a hobby. The mountain demanded more from me, and the name confirmed it. That's when I understood. The name wasn't just a title, it was a covenant. And covenants aren't broken. One of the most powerful lessons the name taught me is this. Sometimes the world will call you by your destiny before you see it in yourself. That's why the prophecy from Bishop Gibson stayed with me. That's why teachers, strangers, and friends kept speaking greatness over me even when I was still a kid from the back row. Still wearing glasses, still unsure of who I was. They weren't naming the moment, they were naming the mission. And that's the thing about names. They shape you. If you accept a small name, you live a small life. If you accept a broken name, you live broken. But if you dare to accept a great name, even when it feels bigger than you grow into it. That's what happened with me. The Phenom wasn't about ego. It wasn't about bragging rights. It was about alignment. It was about remembering that what was inside me couldn't be ignored, couldn't be hidden, couldn't be silenced. And the truth is, I didn't just get the name, I earned it through the struggle, through the doubt, through the late nights, through the isolation, through the sacrifices that nobody clapped for. Every scar, every loss, every lonely night became proof that the word fit. So now, when I hear it, I don't flinch, I don't shrink, I don't question it, I accept it, because the Phenom isn't just a name, it's my identity, it's my responsibility, it's my destiny, and no matter how high the mountain gets, I'll climb it with that name carved into my spirit. The Phenom by Jeda Ali. Chapter 9, Legacy. Legacy is the echo of your life after you're gone. It's not the money you stack, not the cars you drive, not the trophies you hold up for a moment. Those things fade. Legacy is what remains when the shine wears off. It's the seeds you planted in people, the blueprint you leave behind, the voice that still speaks even when you're silent. For me, legacy became the real reason behind the climb. Because at some point, being the Phenom wasn't about proving I could do it, it was about proving others could too. It was about showing that a kid from the back row of a church, a kid who was doubted by family, a kid who felt outcast by friends, could still carry greatness and build something eternal. I wanted my story to stand as evidence. Evidence that no matter where you start, no matter what voices tell you can't, destiny has the final word. Legacy is not just about how high you climb, it's about how many hands you pull up behind you. And that's why every sacrifice, every loss, every lonely night started to make sense. They weren't just for me, they were shaping a testimony big enough to light the way for others. Because the truth is, the mountain isn't mine alone, it's ours. And if my climb leaves a trail, then maybe the next person won't feel as lost in the fog. Legacy isn't built in the spotlight, it's built in the shadows. It's in the nights nobody sees you working. It's in the mornings you show up when no one else does. It's in the sacrifices you make that nobody claps for. Those moments don't trend, don't get posted, don't go viral, but they last. Because legacy isn't about attention, it's about foundation. I used to think legacy was some big moment, some speech, some award that would stamp my name in history. But the more I lived, the more I realized legacy is built brick by brick in the daily choices. Every time I refused to quit, every time I kept my standards high, every time I told the truth when it would have been easier to lie, every time I showed someone their greatness when they couldn't see it themselves, that's legacy. And the wild part, most of the time, you won't even know when you're building it. You'll just be living, fighting, creating it, and years later someone will come to you and say, "You changed my life," and you won't even remember the moment they're talking about. That's the power of legacy. It outlives your memory of it. It's not about being remembered. It's about leaving something worth remembering. And the truth is, the Phenom isn't just my name. It's the blueprint. It's the reminder that greatness is possible even when it feels unreachable. Because if I can climb the mountain, so can you. Legacy isn't only about what you leave behind. It's about what you leave within. Money can be spent. Property can be sold. Awards can gather dust. But what you put inside people lasts forever. The words, the example, the energy, that's what truly carries on. I think about the kids who will one day hear my story. Maybe they'll be sitting in the back of a church like I once was, feeling invisible, feeling like nobody sees them. And maybe they'll hear my name, my climb, my sacrifices, and something inside them will spark. Something will whisper, "If he did it, I can too." That's legacy, and it's deeper than family bloodlines. It's about spiritual lineage. It's about transferring strength, vision, and belief into the next generation. The Phenom isn't just me. It's a mindset. It's the courage to accept that you're chosen, even when people don't clap. It's the discipline to rewire your mind when negativity tries to program you. It's the faith to keep climbing the mountain when the air gets thin and you're gasping for breath. That's what I want to leave behind. Not perfection, not the image of a man who never struggled, but the truth of a man who struggled and still kept going. A man who was doubted, tested, cut down, but still rose. Because legacy isn't about being flawless, it's about being faithful. And that's the echo I want my life to carry long after I'm gone. Legacy also demands that you face the truth about time. No matter how high you climb, no matter how great you become, time will eventually catch up. None of us stay here forever. The body weakens, the voice grows quieter, the stage lights dim, but what you've built in others, that never fades. That's why I stopped asking, how much can I gain? And started asking, how much can I give that lasts? Because the real measure of greatness isn't how tall the mountain you climbed was. It's how many people found courage to climb theirs because they saw you do it. That's why I live the way I live. That's why I push through the pain, through the loneliness, through the cost, not just for me, but for the ones coming after me. Because one day, someone will need my story like oxygen. They'll need a proof that the chosen still rise, even when they come from nothing. And if my journey can give them breath, then every scar on me was worth it. Legacy is the baton in the race, and one day I'll have to pass it. But when I do, I want to make sure the next runner doesn't just carry my name, they carry my fire, because the goal isn't just to be remembered, it's to be multiplied. And legacy is not about living forever. It's about creating something that does. I used to think my story was about me, my battles, my dreams, my climb. But the truth is, it was always bigger than that. The mountain was never just my assignment. It was my training ground. It was shaping me, but it was also shaping the trail I'd leave behind for others. And now I see it clearly. Every heartbreak, every loss, every lonely night was carving a message into the rock. A message that says, you can make it, keep climbing. That's my legacy, not the fame, not the applause, not the moments where people clapped when I finally proved them wrong. My legacy is the quiet strength in someone who remembers my story when they're ready to give up on their own. Because the truth is, The greatest gift you can leave behind is belief. Belief that destiny is real. Belief that greatness is worth the cost. Belief that no matter how heavy the climb, the view from the top makes every step worth it. And so when I leave this earth, I don't just want people to say, he was the Phenom. I want them to say, because he climbed, I believed I could too. That's a legacy. That's the echo I want carved into eternity. And with that, my climb continues, higher, deeper, further, not just for me, but for every soul bold enough to carry the fire after me.